Good afternoon. This is the Steve Mazzacane podcast. It is 4 o'clock. It is October 12th, so we will get going in just a second. As you may have noticed, our sponsor today is GW Carson's, one of our new marketing partners we're working with. So you'll see more of them on Brantford 7 and more of their food items and some more discussion. Last week we talked a lot about the restaurant business and some of the marketing problems that people have. We'll be talking more about that more. Listen, in Brantford along the shoreline, we want every business to do well. And so we'll talk about that after we get through these political interviews, which we have for the next 2 weeks. So yesterday we had Ray Ingraham. Many comments came in afterwards, just questions on some things he said, some questions I asked. I appreciate those, and we'll get to those in the week after when we get a chance to follow up with candidates. But I want to get through all of these key interviews before we go back and do follow-up questions or follow-up discussions as needed. Today is Paul Crisci. He is the Republican running for the 12th Senate District. It is currently held by Christine Cohen. So as a challenger, we'll have some questions for him. Our goal with this interview is to see what are the differences, and what if we between choosing these two candidates, not what their similarities are, but what's different between them, what he feels he can do differently or better. I will pull him in. Give me here. Paul, can you see me?
How you doing, Steve? I can see you.
Okay. All right. So I know just to tell the audience, your internet is good, but may not be perfect. If we have a little lag, I'll let you know. We'll follow up on some of those things. But welcome. First, congratulations on putting your name in the ring. Politics is a tough game at times, and we understand it takes a lot to throw yourself in there. So thank you for that. But before we get to any heavy topics, Paul, can you give us a rundown of you? Who are you? And then whatever your life experience was to a point that you said, I want to run for office. How'd you get here?
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you having me on. People have heard my story since I've been, put my hat in the ring for this. The street, a single mom, and things were like then. One is, and I've said this to a lot of people. People used to sit down on the front stoop and maybe wherever we were when it came election time, they all talked about the issues and not so a little crazy. I know offline I use the term like blood sport with you. It's gotten a little crazy out there. Like I said, I've told this story. I was sitting there during the pandemic. I was having a vigorous my brother and it was a group text, and I stopped myself. I said, what? Literally like at each other's throats over right, left, and coincidentally at the same time I had been running some marketing, and for after the election was over, the campaign manager said, you know a lot about politics, and I said, yeah, come find me when the election, the next time we have an election. And they did. They showed up. What gives you the idea that I can be a good candidate for you? And they told me what the needs and the wants were, and I took some time to think about it. And I remember being in Arizona. I called my wife and I said to her, I'm gonna do it. And she's like, seriously? I'm like, yeah. She goes, the most private put themselves out there for the whole world. I said, yep, let's do this. So that's where I am now. It's not just Democrat, Republican. We got to fix the political landscape. I really feel gotten so crazy that we've lost our way, and we're dismissing. There's a level of political nation, like we're putting people into a bucket and on either side and hating each other. So I mean, next to my name, and people lose their minds. And I said to them, if I was a Democrat, would you feel better? Yes, because what if I'm good for the job? And Republicans are, you're a rhino. You're trying to go in the middle. I'm like, no, common sense. And if there's something that makes sense, let's fix the problem. This is about the people of Connecticut, and we're going to see what we can do here. So,
well, it's interesting because when I first saw your political campaign slogan, that common sense aspect of it, there's a legit question on what is common sense and how is that measured. Mm-hmm. Like there are serious issues. It's not as obvious or as common as a lot of things, and issues are often far more intricate than, all right, that's obvious. It's not always that obvious, or these are far more detailed, intricate questions. So I'm going to start with the same question that you have gotten probably a million times as a Republican running in a liberal state.
Sure.
You know the question, but after Roe v. Wade, we have to start with this. What is your take on abortion, the Roe v. Wade decision, and what Connecticut should do moving forward?
So, video out shortly after it happened, and I try and diffuse things. First of all, like I said, the Republicans, they have this thing, and that's not the case. You know, there are people that I've said a million times, my personal feelings, and everybody's got a personal feelings. It doesn't mean that just that is going to reflect in your work. Okay, you know, when people go into the military, they have different views, job to do. A police officer still has a job to do. If I'm a senator, I'm going to have a job to do. Okay, though I do that, I'm a faith-based person. Look, I believe I'm not crazy about abortions, I think, but that doesn't mean I have to impose my will on somebody. So although I believe in the sanctity of a faith-based guy, and you know, in the Bible, God never told you that you people have free will. So my job is not to go and impose my will on somebody. First of all, and once a woman gets pregnant, the man forfeits his right, pretty much for the opinion, because he had it happening. That's my opinion. Again, people might say, "Oh, that's not fair." The woman has all of the burden of this. What happens with the child if it's born? What happens with her feelings if the child's not? No one can put themselves in the woman's shoes except the woman. So my take is real simple. It's between a woman and God. I have no place in it. Now, what I've said very clearly is I do believe that clarity, better education, and I don't mean this like that people are ignorant. I mean education as to here's the options, and allow the person before they make a very difficult decision to know what all they're. Well, that's Planned Parenthood. I want to make sure that's there. I want to make sure it's better. I want to make sure how they can prevent these things from happening. So, you know, the idea that I would replace, repeal, or change what first of all, somebody voted these elected officials in to make the rules that we're at today. A place to go and change something because of anyone's feelings, whether it's the rules are in place, they're here, they're not made to be changed. All I want to do is educate, hopefully never put themselves, because I can't imagine that any woman says that an abortion was a good experience. Make sure that we give them the best opportunity to make their decision on the things that are during the decision process.
All right, so Paul, I have to stop here just because while I think I understand most of what your point is, the audio is not good. So you're kind of cutting in and out a little bit. I don't know if there's a better way or another location that would help.
I'm going to go outside.
All right, maybe that will help.
Is this any better?
Yeah.
How about now?
Yeah, there's still a significant lag. You're kind of frozen. Oh, there we go.
Am I better?
A little bit better.
No.
All right.
I'll stand here.
Yeah, no. I know you'll stand anywhere, and I want to make sure your points are articulated because while I can make out the points, it does for the general audience. It can be rough if you're going in and out.
How about now?
All right, a little better. Let's try it.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a little lag. So do me a favor, just talk slowly. I know that's a really hard thing to ask anybody with an Italian last name. I know that from experience. I'm going to ask you to speak a little slowly so we can get the points across. From what I'm gathering from what you just said, you're a faith-based person. And I saw that in your bio on your website when you talked about starting women's softball. The first thing there was God. But your viewpoint is that it's not your job or role to tell somebody else what they should do. Okay, understand that. The question is, faith in the state is, if the federal government is opening that up more to the state, would you be in favor of, for example, a constitutional amendment that codifies a woman's right to have an abortion performed?
If you were able, can you hear me good bit now? A little better?
It's still skipping a little, but go ahead.
I apologize.
Okay.
So one of the things very clear was these rules were put into place before I was even thought about. I'm not going to look to replace, repeal, or change laws that I serve the Connecticut. And if the people of Connecticut by majority want this, then that's not my place to change. The majority wanted it because it's in place now. So, am I doing good?
It sounds a little bit better. Yeah, no, go ahead.
So
go ahead.
I'm so sorry. So I want to make sure that my interest is not in changing the laws. That I am not looking to vote for those laws to be changed. I'm not looking to get a majority so we can have this sinister. The laws are in place. I just want better communication and options for education so they can have all the things laid out before them before they make a tough decision.
Okay, so for example, would you mandate some education happen to someone before they wanted an abortion? Or would you mandate, for example, that someone under 18's parents must be notified?
Wrong word, okay? And that, again, forgive me, I'm gonna nitpick a little bit because when to weaponize and be very hypersensitive to words. Mandate means we're going to make somebody do something. I want that information, then they don't have to take that information. But I want to make sure that we communicate well. As we have in government today is communication. I think so many things could be dealt with or understood, or less issues if people fully understood the laws were, how things were changed, when they were changed. So at the end of the day, I'm not looking at a man to put it in place so that it was available for people. Underage, look, I'd like to know what's going on with my daughter. I heard, yesterday Ray said 60. There are bad parents out there. There are parents that would not be okay. There should be someone to intervene, but not let a parent know. I think parents, when they're adults, no, then they're adults. But there's certain things that we're responsible. If a child does something wrong before 18 years old, in many cases, the parents could be held greatly responsible, even from penalties of law. But then we're knocked up, let's say, on a on their medical expenses when they receive a bill from their insurance. That's where common sense comes in. There should be at least the parents should have.
Okay. I'm going to just say this too. The audio is a little better. We're going to continue this, but we may reschedule you to give people a better opportunity to hear some of these opinions, because we're going to record this and ask you a few more questions, but I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to get to hear what you have to say. So that we may look at this like another.
I'm going to turn off my cell service and see if just 1 second.
All right, we'll wait.
Just see if that works.
We'll give Paul a second to make this work. It's not, as much as I can kind of make out the points that he's making, it's unfair to run for office and not be able to articulate it. And I understand not everyone has great cell service where they are. If he comes back on, we'll join him. This question of abortion is an interesting one. Obviously, we're in Connecticut, so it's a liberal state. It's a state that overwhelmingly would support a woman's right to choose. That said, there's even more details that go into that. So the question isn't just, does a woman have a right to choose? The question is, does Connecticut go a step further and codify that, make that constitutional law? Secondly, there are many other aspects within abortion. Who is notified? Are people forced, for example, mandated, and we may not like that word, but mandated to go through a certain level of education before having an abortion? Are those that are under 18 or under 16, is a requirement that their parents be notified? There are pros and cons to all of those things. So, and then I question this when someone stands. Very often someone may say to us, I don't want to change any existing rules, but would you go further and codify and lock those in for future generations? And those are the questions that we kind of want to answer. Yes, the Democrats in this race are going to push that issue, right? In general, they are. I want as much freedom of choice as we can get, and the state agrees with them. And the question is, if that's the only thing you're going to vote based on, you're going to vote one way. If that is something that there's some gray area on for you, you may look at other issues as well. Now I have Paul here. I'm going to see if it works. If not, we'll reschedule him and try another time to do this. But let's try this one more time. Okay, Paul.
Any better?
Well, let's try it for a second and see how it goes. Okay, just do the same thing. Talk slowly. Yeah, we're not getting. We're really not getting much volume here.
How about now?
A little better.
Anything better?
I can hear you. I can hear you. So this is what we'll do now. We'll throw this into what is likely your wheelhouse. Now I know you were in the auto industry for a long time, and you started a marketing company that has been pretty successful. So you, as someone who does marketing myself, I work with a lot of small businesses and know those challenges. Talk to me about what you see as a significant issue for business in Connecticut and what you'd want to address should you be elected.
This problem's one that just occurred, which is our insurance issues. You know, it's not a user-friendly state. I mean, I'm not going to pick on other politicians, but you know that it's a complicated state to do business in. I mean, okay, so more user-friendly. When companies like GE left, and I mean this is low-hanging fruit to mention, when attracting businesses here, and we're making it harder and harder for small businesses. I have to decide, are they going to offer medical insurance now? We needed to do a better job, not be so reactive. When we were doing this, when this situation came up. I mean, 15, 20 medical. How does that make sense?
Okay, so that begs the next question. Would you support a system that was larger government insurance, more socialized type medicine programs, like say Massachusetts has and has had for some time? Would you do that here or try to do that here in Connecticut?
You know, Steve, on a lot of things I've said when I've spoken to people, you get in there and what's your decisions? You know, that's something that has to be looked at. I think that we have, and again, Ray mentioned this yesterday, a monopoly. We taking 7 degrees back to $1. And, you know, now you have all of these little, and these doctors now have moved in and they're on a time limit from what I've experts, 8 minutes, because that's what they need to get people in. It's a revolving door. It's become a business. We have to open up more opportunities to more insurance companies, more competition in here so that people would vie for the business instead of being able to just say, hey, we're going to raise 20%. And by the way, and so I can't say that I'm 100% ready to say that expand that from a government sense, but I am open to really have to look at it further. I don't want to just, you know, shoot from the hip on something like that. Everybody has medical. That's a no-brainer. But we also have to make sure that we're not and that we can afford it. So you know, we can't bankrupt the state. We can't turn around and be able to have poor medical care while we're at it. So those are things that I have to look at. And going back to, I just want a business aspect of things. You know, we are taxing businesses out of the state. There's other states that big things that I've noticed is, you know, we educate our people in the, what's the first thing they do? They go to other places to go to work. We don't want for business right now. We need to be able to have a place where people are born, educated here, and then they take their skills and they stay here with their tax dollars, and they want to be here, leaving the state to go other places to work their jobs. And I think that's a major factor as well. The less taxpayers are there, the less we have. The more businesses we have here, the more people they're hiring, more taxes out, everyone getting raised higher taxes kind of subsides.
Okay, but you know, you are describing the problem, and I could appreciate that, but I haven't quite heard what is your solution to that. What will change if those are the things that are happening, and that's the trend in the state? Is there a bill or a law or an approach that you would favor that you would think would reverse that trend?
So I apologize for that. We need to draw businesses back in. What makes it more attractive to do? So that requires people sitting down in a room together and looking at what the idea would be, able to lower the tax rate and allowing businesses to make it more attractive for them to be here as a business. So that's one particular area. You can't leave people, wondering if next year they're going to have a new increase. So I would tell you that tax rates for businesses so that they can perform here.
Okay. All right. So I am going to, let's try this again, because it looks like right now you're coming in a little better. So this might be good. From a business perspective, so you talked a little bit about healthcare. In issues like Branford and Madison, a little bit in East Haven, the question of affordable housing and a state law about affordable housing has been a large part of the discussion. Talk to me about the current state law, its impact on towns, and if you feel there's a way to address that in some way.
So what you have right now is, and again, I'm going to discuss the problem first. One is we have to fix the current problems. We're doing a really bad job with this current situation we have. So there's two elements here. There's people that are looking to allowing developers to come in a little bit easier. So government control up in Hartford, and that's becoming a real issue for us. They're saying, well, okay, I moved into a town, my tax dollars are going here, and now I'm running into another issue. You hear me still?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. So
Okay, so we lost him again. We're going to have to reschedule. I think we might be. Paul, I'm going to bring you on here. No, we lost you again. All right, so we're going to look at rescheduling him. It's just not fair that we have such poor. I mean, I'm actually really good. I have really good internet. I think just where he is a tough spot. These questions are. It's tough to be a politician, running for office or getting in office, and I have worked with a million of them. When you're running for office, I call it, describing the water. And it's coming from a line in the movie As Good as It Gets, where Jack Nicholson says, I'm drowning here and you're describing the water. And what politicians often do, and candidates, and this is both parties, is they tell you how they relate to the issue that people are having. But we also need to ask, what specifically would you change? How would you address this? And that's the question that we have with affordable housing. There's a fundamental flaw. Now, Ray yesterday was probably more of an expert on affordable housing because he's lived it the last 4 or 5 years. And the fact is, there's a state law that holds towns hostage. And it basically says, unless you have a certain amount that's designated affordable housing, you have all these disadvantages when it comes to allowing or not being able to stop or modify developers coming in. The problem with that law is that it doesn't actually count affordable housing. It only counts housing that is funded by the federal government, and therefore housing that exists naturally is not counted in that calculation. In Branford, it means trailer parks, it means condos, it means lower rent houses are not counted. So the average person says, yes, I want affordable housing, but the developers know that the average person's definition of affordable housing and the legal definition of affordable housing are two drastically different things. And so we see these developers coming to meetings and saying, how can you be against affordable housing? As if they don't know it's this legal definition, which is basically nonsense. And so then we have money being spent to get developers in here who make use of that ridiculous definition in whole towns like Branford and East Haven, Madison and Guilford hostage. So it's an interesting question. It probably is worth a much larger discussion, and it's impacting in fact, Guilford is doing an affordable housing plan now. In my experience, the money being spent per unit for affordable housing by the state and by taxpayers is probably the least efficient dollar that you can spend. It makes no sense. They're not getting the most bang for their buck, and I would have a serious problem with that. What we'll do is we'll look to schedule Paul another time. I just don't think it's fair He's articulating his stance on some things. We should give him the chance to hear those. Unfortunately, where he is just not. Maybe he'll be better later on at night. We are scheduled one for tomorrow, and we do have 3 next week. We can fit in a 4th next week if we can get him in there. But he does deserve the right to be heard and give us a chance to get to know him. He's a new person in politics. It's an interesting story. I've gone to his website. You talk a lot about softball. His girls are raising them in the Monroe area and then coming to the shoreline. He started a marketing company, which is, I can tell from experience, and a very successful marketing company. So it's interesting that you have 2 strong business people back to back, Paul and Christine Cohen, who's very well known throughout the town with Cohen's Bagels. So that's an interesting, on both of those, you can have a very good discussion on business. That said, I will reschedule him. He's texting me now, and I'm going to let him know we're going to reschedule. And that's completely fine, and that happens, and that's life. And it's happened before. We've had people on that it just didn't connect. This is what happens with using these services and not always being in person. And as you all know from experience, there's times my volume doesn't work. So it is what it is. That said, tomorrow is Rich DiNardo, who is running for Sean Scanlon's old seat against Moira, and we will have Moira on next week. Next week is Robin Comey and Christine Cohen. Just a few things to talk about before we go. If you are interested, this Saturday begins the town's pickleball tournament. I'll be there despite having no idea how to play pickleball, but I'm helping organize that. If you want to join, go to the town's Parks and Rec website, look for the Branford Open Pickleball Tournament, and log into that. We'll see how many people we have signed up, and then we'll figure out our tournament ladder schedule on Saturday morning. If you are a pickleball player, normally on Saturday morning, understand the hard courts we'll be using for pickleball on Saturday. So you will not have your normal pickleball courts available to you. Last time when we did tennis, some people were upset. We have a tournament. It's a town tournament. That's the way life is. That said, we're going to let it go from there. It's almost 4:30. We will get a rescheduled date for Crisci. We'll announce that. Tomorrow is Rich DiNardo. We have him. He's running in Guilford, and also 2 districts of Branford to represent. So we have an open seat there where Sean Scanlon's going on to the comptroller race. Okay, so we'll get back to this, and we'll give him a chance to articulate some of those stances. Ask him a few more questions as soon as we reschedule. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. It's a great night. I'm going to play some tennis. I hope you have a great evening, and I will see you tomorrow.